It's working.
All right, welcome to Go For Side Effects. I'm your host, Kevin Samuel, and my co-host, John. John, how you doing?
I'm doing
We're
good.
going to start
Doing
this
good.
all over again. So let y'all know that my son went out of town unexpectedly, and I'm trying to figure this new setup out. So thank y'all for bearing with me. And and you know, we got Linda. Everybody knows Linda with Sit Happens Dog Training LLC. Linda, how are you?
Good. How y'all doing?
Good. Ashley Gagnon, she's probably going to kill me later because this is going to be twice that I've had to say, how are you doing this evening? And thank you for coming on.
Great. Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. So now that I got this figured out, hey, if there's ever any more technical difficulties, nobody call me because I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I got a producer. And so my producer went out of town unexpectedly, but I forgive him because he had to. So, Ashley, as I was speaking earlier, you already know the question, but let me say it again so everybody can hear it. So, with veterans that, you know, because she is a physician's assistant, she works with VES and QTC, etc., all them, and you're like a contracted out physician's assistant for the VA, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so, with that being said, when people go for their exams, I had one particular question, and this question is a really good question. Is this young gentleman, he had chronic fatigue syndrome in his diagnosis for a while. The evaluation officer there said, hey, guess what? It's because of your medication. Well, he already had it before he was taking medication, and it's a presumptive. So, what can he do to better assist him in that?
So, CMP examiners, for lack of a better term, exist to kind of Monday quarterback people. I hate doing that in medicine because we want to think that our colleagues work in the best interest of people, but it's called a medical practice for a reason. We're not all perfect. And so there are instances where colleagues of mine have inappropriately diagnosed with someone that did not meet diagnostic criteria. That's one instance where I've seen things happen. And to answer your question with an example, I had a veteran who was Agent Orange exposure. He was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic by their VA primary care provider, but they actually never met diagnostic criteria for type 2 diabetes. They were just under the threshold. Diagnostic criteria for type 2 diabetes is a hemoglobin A1C level of 6.5 or higher on 2 different occasions, 90 days apart. They had 6.5 one time. They were put on medication. It brought their A1C down nice and beautifully low to a 6.2, and therefore they were never officially diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And so when they came in for their claim, yes, their record said they had type 2 diabetes, and yes, they were on metformin, which treats diabetes, but because they didn't have those 2 readings, which are diagnostic criteria to be diagnosed, they did not get the diagnosis, and therefore that presumptive was not service connected. So unfortunately, there are circumstances where someone is inappropriately diagnosed, and that's what the CMP exam is for, is to really pick apart and ensure that the diagnosis was rendered appropriately. That is one instance, and I'm not to say that that one instance is the same thing for that person. Another example is there may be a play on semantics here. There's a large difference between chronic fatigue, right, and chronic fatigue syndrome. Okay, so there is, and then there's a difference between chronic fatigue syndrome, and idiopathic chronic fatigue. And so in clinical practice, we exist to really pick apart and find the difference. And so the big thing is that with chronic fatigue syndrome, there is actually changes within the brain that are occurring. And so it can be quantified a little bit more than just I'm tired all the time. And there's a different severity level. And so we ask very pinpoint questions in our exam to differentiate of, are you really tired because of something else going on? Or do you have a form of myalgic encephalopathy, which is chronic fatigue syndrome? That's a really like a semantics kind of situation. And it's really hard to really pick apart that veteran situation without looking through their medical record myself, but that could potentially explain what that discrepancy was.
Very interesting. Okay.
So,
Okay, so the other question is I have a shipmate of mine. Y'all are gonna love this one. And he should be listening. If he's not, I'm gonna kick his ass. But one of the reasons that me and him were talking today is I went ahead, I told him, I said, hey, get everything gathered up. You know, go in, file everything at one time. You just have, and so he did today. And so when he went into today, he got sinusitis and right rhinitis down in his problems list, and so which he needed. And he has almost the same things I do. I know I have sinusitis, but I never filed it. But for him, he's worried about his VSO in his area because they're not very good. I won't say the state, but they're not very good. And so I think what I'm going to do is send them over to Sean and let Sean take a look at them. But one of the questions is when he goes in that exam, he wants to bring paperwork. I told him there's no point because they've never looked at mine. They have everything already there. But would you recommend people bringing in paperwork or no paperwork?
And I think that's just maybe personal preference. I can only speak for myself and my opinion. Personally, I love it. By the time that the claim file gets submitted to me, it is such a gargled piece of junk. Like, it is really hard to differentiate of what A versus B versus C is. And you are really on a hunt and peck mission, especially when we get these claim files where you were in a service era where majority of your medical records are handwritten, because the AI software, if I were to search sinusitis, congestion, headache, like any of those trigger words that I'd expect to see in your medical record with you presenting and complaining about this, they can't read handwriting. So none of that is going to show up. So if you have service treatment records and you've got photocopies of those sheets from those sick call visits, by all means, bring them in and say, hey, here, like have your ducks in a row. Hey, June 6, 1987 was the first time I went in. Here it is right here. And then I came back July 9th, 1987 again, because I wasn't getting better. Have that out and ready for those dates, because then you've armed yourself with that knowledge too, to know for a fact that that service treatment record cites it. Because then if you get denied, right, and then you review what the denial was and they say there was no in-service event, you can say, BS, I have it right here in hand. I've got where I went to sick call and I complained to my corpsman or I complained to my medic, and it's handwritten. And it may have just been that it was skipped over and missed because it didn't show up in the search when we were trying to smart search it.
Linda, do you have any questions? I mean, I got a few more, but I'm going to ask you because I know you've been doing, and you go to these evaluations and everything. Do you have any questions that you could ask that might?
Well, it's a little bit different now. I initially went in 2015 for the Gulf War. I was in the Gulf War from August 90 until about April or May of 91. No medical records. I don't have anything. I have nothing handwritten. I was in for 4 years, got out after 4 years, and didn't take anything with me. But anyway, I applied in 2015. E-benefits is a little bit different now. I was able to track everything and see what was coming in, going in, and I had all my medical records from my private doctor because I never went to a VA doctor ever up until the last 3 or 4 years. So between 2015 and 2018, there's some appeals in there, and everything that I had was what I had. I did have some of the exams done at the VA hospital. I never went through VES until recently.
Yep, that was a
So
change I think in 2017 that came down.
so VS came, okay, so that's where the change was. So I'm at 100%, well, 91%, but I'm at 100% unemployability. But I'm trying to get the chronic fatigue added because that's my main thing. I know at the beginning they were talking about the fibro, and then they give all these subcategories under the fibro. I'm like, the fibro, I feel like is a separate entity. Chronic fatigue is what is keeping me from doing anything. So my VA doctor a year ago, was doing all these tests. She got some ultrasounds done. Um, checking, adrenal glands, and did some extra testing, and that was already on top of the testing that my private doctor had done prior to 2018, 2009, no, prior to 2019 and 20. So this is the last 4 years. So she did some extra testing last, a year ago, eliminated all this other stuff. I mean, I've had MRIs done, CAT scans done to eliminate MS and all this other stuff too. So she diagnosed me with that. Well, I've been going through some stuff this last year, and finally, like, okay, I just need to get this added onto, it's service connected. And then they threw the VES exam out there. I'm like, well, I got diagnosed with it and whatever, and kind of went through that weird, like, resistant kind of period a couple months ago. I'm like, why am I doing all this? Anyway, so I go over there. The guy had me in his office for 5 minutes and was pushing me out. He didn't talk to me. He said, you shouldn't, he said, you really didn't have to come in, but they forced me to have you come into the office. We could have done this over the phone. Sorry for they had to travel over here for nothing. I was in there 5 minutes. I stayed an extra 10 minutes because I was going to show him. He said, you need to make sure you need a sleep study to make sure to eliminate sleep apnea. I said, I already had that done. I had it done twice. He says, well, it's not here. I'll find it for you. Hold on. So I'm going through all my medical records between the two entities that I have here was not in there, and I know I've seen it. He just pushes me out and says, I'm just going to send it in as it is now. And I'm like, I'm going to order the sleep study. I'm like,
So
if you
what?
find it, just send it to VES. So I got on the phone within 5 minutes down the road. Apria, who does our sleep studies here in the area, oh, let me email it to you. Bam, send it to me. I sent it to him with that, an hour later, he says, I already sent it to VES, so just send it to them. So now I'm still here waiting. It's been about a month or so. But I told him I have the sleep studies done. I know, I'll find it. Give me a few minutes. And he didn't have, I could have showed him right on my phone 5 minutes later. But then now I'm in this limbo again. But and I understand trying to eliminate a diagnosis that might be affecting the chronic fatigue, right? My doctors have been so thorough that everything is there, and then I come across this and like, and now I don't know what the next step after this is, but I'm sure it's going to be dragged out. But I mean, I don't have to worry like other people have to worry trying to get to 100% because I'm not at the unemployability. But
What
it's
can they do
just
about it?
I'm trying to get treatment for it because it is debilitating.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my, I want treatment for it, which I don't know if there is, but
This, I don't mean this rudely. Are you asking, is your question in regard to treatment for chronic fatigue, or is your question in regard to
I
like
was really
the
disappointed at
process?
the yeah, I was disappointed in the VES exam. Um, I was in there 5 minutes, pushes me out. I he
Yeah.
didn't even talk to me. I'm just ordering a sleep study for you. Sorry that you had to come all the way down here for me to order a sleep study. I have that already. Well, it's not here, but I have it. Give me a few minutes and just shove me out the door. And now again, so I don't know if that's a question or not. I think it's just a complaint.
No, that's okay. I mean, everybody has their bad experiences with CMP examiners. And I empathize your position because it is frustrating, and especially in these rural areas, we do drive really far to get these exams done. And there's a lot of anxiety building up into these CMP exams, and I understand that. And you have a lot of hope invested in it, and to just have such a poor outcome, it starts to, you already, there's a large amount of veterans that have a lot of distrust within the system, and then this further undermines it. And so I understand that. It's CMP examiners are put in a unique position where we don't have a lot of power. And all we can do is comment on what is there, and it gets frustrating and hard because we see the holes, and maybe the holes aren't there, and maybe your primary care did do it, like your situation. They did order a sleep study, but it's not there for us. The VA didn't provide it to us. And so we have to have that. And if it's not present within the claim file, because you have to remember the two sides of the VA don't talk to each other. These are two very separate entities. And that's something that a lot of veterans forget is they go, well, I get all my care through the VA. The VA ordered my sleep study. Why don't they have it? They should already know that this is here. And the thing is that although they are both Department of Veteran Affairs, they are two very different organizations that do not intertwine or have access to one another. So you have to permit information to be passed from one side of the house to the other side of the house, right? It's like having two divorced parents, right? You gotta pack your stuff up in a suitcase and bring it over from mom's house to dad's house in order for us to talk about it. And so sometimes some of that stuff doesn't make it. And that's why we full circle back to it's okay to bring your stuff on paper to the exam. It's okay to have your documents with you, because there is some times where there are holes in the system and we don't have everything up front. I will tell you this, there is some pushback, and it depends who you get on these organizations. I have been told multiple times it is not my responsibility to turn in information that should have been turned in to me. And that is the mindset, is that the VA tells a veteran prior to this appointment, you should have your entire package neat and ready to go with all the information prior to that appointment. The VA should have all of that information. Now, how are you supposed to know that they have all that information? You don't. And you assumed that they did, and that's okay, because why wouldn't you? And this is a perfect shining example where the C&P examiner doesn't have all that information. And you can sit here and cry until the cows come home and say, look, here it is. I have it on my phone. I've had so many patients pull up my chart, with Essentia and Sanford and all these health systems we have out here. And they're like, look, here it is. I have it right here. Here it is on my phone. I'm like, that's fine. I see it. I can cite it and discuss it all I want. But if it's not in your claim file, the VA is going to kibosh it and say that it's not, there's no evidence of it within there. Because if it's not scanned and a part of that pretty neat little package that was created before you came to me, that is not evidence that is considered within the claim. And that is the issue. And that's not communicated. I don't know why it's not communicated.
Well, I don't, and that's another thing is that I don't know who does. I don't carry my medical records around with me. Everything is in, through my private doctor, everything's there. I don't print off anything, and there's some things that's kind of embedded, like the sleep study. I saw it at one time on my chart, but then I had called Apria and they emailed it to me, so they showed me the form, the results. It used to be there, but it changed, and I think there's some stuff changing here with the two clinics that I've been seeing for the last 20 years. But I don't carry that stuff around with me, so and everything's digital. So I mean, there's one time I went down to my local doctor, my private doctor, and said, "Hey, I want my hard copy medical records." We don't do that. We don't
Right.
have those. So I mean, I don't, and anything from when I was in, I didn't have any of that. I don't. It's been
Yeah.
35 years,
I,
so
I and I found it like this. You said one thing that is exactly right. The other hand does not talk to the other hand.
Right.
You have a right hand and a right hand. You don't have a right and left hand. That's the one thing I've learned about the VA and that's the one thing that needs to be pushed back by our legislators to say, hey, y'all both sides need to start talking to each other, because without that, I know it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work.
Well, and it's also, you could argue that's an invasion of privacy, right? Because now, if they have readily and open access available to your medical records, where is your privacy in that? Let's say then we open up that fear of, let me go to my annual wellness exam with my primary care at the VA and say, I am feeling better, and afraid to say that, because are they then going to reduce your rating because you admit that you're doing okay that day? So then
Okay.
you open up a big box of an invasion of privacy, right? Just and then you don't feel comfortable divulging that to your primary care at the VA, which is another reason why VA primary cares no longer do C&P exams, because it was a huge conflict of interest to have your VA primary care, who sees you for all your chronic conditions, then also determine how much money you deserve a reimbursement because of your service connected conditions, right? So it was just there was too much in the pot, and it was getting too messy, and that's why they decided to separate everything and keep the healthcare side on the healthcare side and keep the compensation and pension on that side, and just keep the two separate so that the waters don't get muddied.
Okay, okay, I can understand that. Now, my next question was from a guy from Bosnia that went to Bosnia and he served over there, and he has real bad sinus problems after he came back. But he went to a VSO and veteran service officer, and they said Bosnia is not covered under anything. Have you heard anybody heard about that?
Yeah, the only two things that I've heard about Bosnia are depleted uranium, but that is a very small group of people, like a very
Right.
select group of people. Um, and then, but you gotta, and the thing is too, is that the presumptives list for exposure to depleted uranium is very, those are very intense cancers. That's
Okay.
the stuff
Yeah.
that you're gonna see with that. But like the sinusitis and stuff like that, no. Mm-mm.
Okay. And see, and that's good questions because in different wars, different things, you just don't know what's going on. I guess I don't know if that was really a conflict, or a peacekeeping mission. I guess really, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so the next question that I had, John, do you have any questions before I get to the next one?
No,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
Okay. So the next question I had was brought up to me by a gentleman that he has never seen the VA. He refuses to go to the VA, period. But yet he wants to file claims.
Mhm.
Would you recommend, he wanted to know, would you recommend him starting to have a dialogue with the VA for it, or does he not need it?
Nope, it's not needed as long as you have private medical records. Like with Linda, right? She got all of her care out in the community, but you just have to, it then becomes put into your lap to obtain those medical records. Now, is it a little bit of pain in the ass? Yeah. But I mean, that's with any system. I mean, my mom wanted to transfer her GI care up here. Well, she's gotten GI care at Banner University, at our local regional medical center down in Arizona. She's gotten it at MD Anderson, Mayo Clinic. She's gone to all these different facilities, and now she has to hunt and peck, and she's got to go to all those individual facilities and say, "Hey, I need a copy of my medical records. I need a copy of my medical records," and it just puts the work in your lap. Right. The only benefit of getting care at and through the VA is to say, all my care was rendered through the VA. I give you access to go ahead and access my medical records. And then they do a poll. And so, and they do a poll that day that you submit. So that's also another thing to remind you, from the day you submit to the day that you show up to the C&P exam, whatever happened in the meantime is not going to be included in that claim. So like a good example was today. I saw a veteran today. He had an MRI done 2 weeks ago. Well, his claim was submitted a month ago. So the results from his MRI are not in his claim file, even though it's through the VA and it's a part of the VA. The day that you say submit this claim, the paper trail stops right there. And then everything gets dumped over from the VA health system. So even then, getting all of your care through the VA, it's not a sure proof way that you're going to get all of the information. But to answer that question, it just puts the work in that person's lap, that they now have to seek out records from all of their private care. The VA is not going to go out and get it on your behalf. You have to do it yourself.
Okay. Oh, I mean, it is a good point because really and truly, you do have to advocate for yourself. And so there was a guy, and all of us can relate to this. He goes down to the VA and he gets diagnosed. I'm not going to say the guy's name. I know him very well, really, really close to me. I mean, really close to me. And his doctor decides, hey, guess what? You're neuropathy. We don't know what kind you really have. So that gentleman has an appointment coming up this Monday. And let's say he goes in there and they decide that the gentleman doesn't have neuropathy, that he has something else. What does he do?
Appointment as in like a CMP exam?
No, no, as a regular appointment with the VA. Okay, it's me. All right. I was told.
I'm confused by your question.
Okay, okay. So my question is, I was told I had neuropathy about 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Well, the last time I went to a neurologist, he says, well, I don't know what type of neuropathy you have. I heard him and the doctor arguing, the main doctor. And he was like, you got to tell this vet, I got to go back in there and say that y'all misdiagnosed him. So they're making me redo a neuropathy test this Monday.
Okay.
And back then they said I had sensory polyneuropathy. So let's say they come back and tell me, well, you don't have neuropathy, but you got this. Do I lose my claims on my neuropathy, or do you happen to know about that? I was just wondering.
So they're not going to know about it unless you file something else and then they re-review your claim. Right, like this is where we talk about they don't have an open tap access to your medical records. So they're not going to know unless you file for something else and then they choose to reevaluate things that you're already service connected for. So this is why we talk about with veterans, if you're already 100%, don't poke the bear, right? Because then they can reopen other things and reassess. And that could be one of those things where they say, oh, hey, you're service connected for neuropathy. Let's circle back on that and see if it really is as bad as we previously examined it as. And then that's when the CMP examiner would have access and go, oh, well, they took away your diagnosis of neuropathy. Nope, condition resolved. And then it would be withdrawn. But that's not going to happen if you don't go to an exam. Do you get what I'm saying?
He believes I have a certain type he doesn't know or anything. I mean, I really was pretty pissed though when he told me they just guessed at what neuropathy you have. And I'm like, well, what do you mean they guessed? So I got to redo all the tests. I did all the blood work. And now I got to go redo that stupid freaking exam where they shock the crap out of you and stick a needle in your leg all the way up to your neck. And it hurts. It's painful. Yes, I'm a crybaby. I do not like pain. I'm a sissy. I'll let you know. I don't like pain. That's why I didn't join.
I don't like pain.
No. Well, I mean, there's some people who can hack it. I can't. Sorry. If I get a man cold, I'm just letting y'all know. If I have a man cold.
A man cold. I've never heard it called a man.
It is called that, isn't it?
Are you serious? That is a thing.
That is
a thing.
It's
real.
If I get a cold,
real.
If I get a cold with no fever, I promise you I'm going to make up I got fever. At least I'm honest, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honest. I'm probably one of the only honest one up here. But now, so another guy had a question, which I just want to bring. I want to ask that question because I didn't know claims changed like that. Okay, so a gentleman comes in and to the VS, and he brings a stack of paperwork up there. Can y'all let them know, oh, wait a second, you should file for this. Why haven't you filed for that? Are y'all allowed to say that or no? That somebody did ask me that.
I'm sorry, repeat it one more time. I had background.
Oh, okay. So say a gentleman comes in and he has a stack of papers and you see that, well, damn, you broke your foot while you were in the service. Have you ever claimed any of that? You know, it's bothering you, right? Yeah. But they haven't. Y'all, is it allowed or is it not allowed?
You tell him that what he's saying, what he's asking.
She knows.
I know.
I know I put you on the spot on that, but he did ask this question.
So, I am very transparent about the things that are clearly chronic. I'm not going to comment on a fracture per se, because let's be honest, how many times have we had a situation where someone's fractured a bone and then they return back to what they're doing and they return with no issues, right? So as long as things are rehabbed and treated appropriately, you can go back to a normal functioning day of life and not have something, because this is where we get into the issue of people tend to forget the purpose of this. We're not disability and compensation and pension, we're not saying things didn't happen to you, right? The purpose of compensation and pension is to compensate you financially every month for something that is debilitating for you for the rest of your life. So when we look at the difference between someone who broke their collarbone and it was rehabbed appropriately, put in a sling, immobilized, was healed correctly, x-rays verify that, they do their separation exam, they have no complaints on separation exam, and they have no like loss of mobility, MSK exam is totally normal. I'm not then going to circle back and say 20 years after the fact, oh hey guy, you fractured your collarbone. Ooh, doesn't that hurt? I'm not gonna incite that because there's no evidence to substantiate it. But when you have something that was an injury and it did not heal appropriately, or you have a chronic condition, I'll give you a perfect example today. I saw a veteran, I'm going through his claim file, and I'm like, hey, you have plantar fasciitis diagnosed while active duty, but it's not on your rating decision letter as being service connected. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, that's chronic. Like, that doesn't get better. That doesn't go away. Like, you have plantar fasciitis. Like, and he's like, oh, he goes, I didn't realize that. And I was like, what are you doing for it? He goes, oh, I still wear inserts and I have custom orthotics. And I was like, okay, are you getting that through the VA? And he's like, no. And I was like, it, you got diagnosed while you're on active duty. And so those are when I pointed out to him, I'm like, hey, like it's here, it's in your record. You just got to file for it, buddy. Like it's right there. And he's like, oh man, I didn't know that. And then he pulled out his phone and he took a picture of his service treatment record the day he was diagnosed and the day that they sent him to podiatry while on active duty and the day they gave him inserts. It establishes it right there. So now, and then when he walked out of there, he called his VSO and said, hey, I want to file for this. Same thing with his sleep apnea. His VSO filed his sleep apnea as a TERA, a toxic exposure, and listed it as a presumptive, which it is not a presumptive. And he was diagnosed 6 months after he got out of the service. Well, that's a direct service connection if it's within 1 year of getting out. And so I told him that too. I said, hey, unfortunately, because your VSO claimed it as a presumptive under PACT Act and it's not, I have to deny your claim. But if you just refile it as a primary service connection, it's going to go through because it was diagnosed within 6 months of you getting off of active duty. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that. And so sometimes things just, I'll point it out if it's there, but like a broken bone that healed appropriately, and then you went about 2 more years of service, and then you had your separation exam and you were okay. You're not going to have a leg to stand on to say that now 20 years after the fact it hurts, you know?
Well, you answer that perfectly because number one is because that, believe it or not, it the CMP examiner I went to, they were like, I don't know why you got this. It's in your service record. Why aren't you filing for that? But they tell me, don't tell them I told you because I can get in trouble. Is that, have you ever heard that?
It's considered a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as a vet, you want to take care of other vets. I mean, so I understand that. See, there is 99.9% of everybody wishing that you were their CMP examiner, by the way, if you want.
And I've gotten I actually got a call from one of the organizations I'm contracted with this week, and they said, hey, don't bring our name up. And I popped up on their algorithm for social media and I got a slap on the wrist. So I'm allowed to say I'm a CMP examiner. I'm not allowed to say for who.
Okay. And yeah, right. And
I didn't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, right. I mean, it's better ask for forgiveness anyway. She
Correct.
didn't know. I swear, y'all, she didn't know.
I didn't.
Okay. I didn't know. And so go ahead, John. I can see them. You're ready to.
Well, because I know that Linda this is directed to see if Linda's got a question for a female veteran friend. I think you're working trying to help out. Is there any question from that person that you can maybe ask Ashley for her or help her out? I mean, I don't know.
I was sitting here trying to remember. She's going through a really hard time. She's filing for the first time. She is a Gulf War vet. She was not, she was in Germany, I found out. So, but there was an accident while she was in that affected her back, something long term, hips, pelvis, something was broken. She was in a bad car accident, something happened, or a bad accident while on duty. It was service related. She was in Germany, so I'm not during the Gulf War, so I'm not sure about exposure over there. She has she has all her files, so that's really good because I was really impressed with that because she has all her stuff from when she was in. Um,
Yeah.
of course, mental health part of it. So anxiety, PTSD, that's kind of something that's a little bit, I know it's a different kind of beast when it comes to, proving, the service connected. But the physical part, I was trying to help her navigate that, but they came back and, um, I can't remember what the issue she was having this summer, but she said it was never filed. And I said, well, as long as you have that phone, even if you called in and had it started, but make sure you get the appeals in. But she has everything. It's just a matter of getting through. And I know when I went through it in 2015, I had everything submitted. I was doing everything on e-benefits. It's different now on the computer. So e-benefits seem to be
See,
a little bit more
was she
clear.
working with the BSO, Linda, or no? Was this
She
friend of yours work?
was, and this VSO, she's not comfortable with how he talked to her. He was very condescending and talked down to her and made her very uncomfortable. Now she's avoiding. So I'm trying to help. I'm not a VSO, but I'm trying to help her just through making sure she's hitting those milestones of the appeals
I
through the regional office, getting it, the second or third appeal, making sure it gets to Washington DC, if that's still how they do things. Um,
honestly, I think what she needs to do is talk to Sean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you agree with me, Ashley? She really does. Linda,
Yeah.
we need to somehow let her get a hold of Sean and really have a talk with him about what's going on. Because
Yeah.
he may do what I would tell her to do, pull it out. Retake your claim back out, start it back over. That's
Yeah.
what I would tell her. And work
she
with a
can't
good
walk, she
VSO.
can't, she's
Yeah,
been,
Well, and
because
she's one of those people that should have filed 15 years ago, but didn't know and just kind of kept plugging away. I did the same thing.
well,
I did not file until 2015 and that's back when I was diagnosed, and then I got a flyer in the mail stating I was diagnosed with my private doctor. 3 months later, I got this flyer in the mail from the VAs talking about the Gulf War illness, and they had this list of things and everything, and I was just diagnosed with 3 months before. I was
a
like,
flyer.
oh, okay, yeah, it was something I got
What
in the mail
the heck? I never got no
after my
flyer.
diagnosis.
Never received any flyer from the
But
Gulf from the
It
Gulf
was
War.
I think Ashley's actually about to tell you what she needs to do, aren't you, Ashley?
Yeah, so this is one of those cases that it's a case by case individual scenario, and it's impossible to comment here on a live platform
Right.
and be able to give an appropriate level of advice. And the other thing is that Sean and I both don't tell people how to file things, because if you do it DIY, 99% of the time you're gonna jack it up and you're gonna file it incorrectly. And solely, a perfect example today is somebody's VSO filed everything incorrectly, presumptive things even. And it's gonna get denied because it was filed wrong. And so it's just best to go to a well-versed VSO. She got vibes from that other VSO that it wasn't working out. So then she just needs to find another one. And luckily Sean is a nationally accredited VSO. And so he can help people nationally, and doesn't need to be local. And
okay.
so
That's good to know.
I think it would be beneficial to reach out to him, because he can file things accordingly, so long as she has continued to receive care and that chronicity is established, right? Because We can't say anything on the matter if there's 10 years of silence in the medical record, because then how do we say that this is something that was disabling and affecting her life if the evidence isn't there? But if she's kept up on it, like you said, and the medical records and evidence are there, then she's got a timeline. She just needs to submit everything.
Yeah.
And I think she was talking about going to another VSO in another city here, but the first one made it triggered her PTSD. So
Kevin
and then she's like,
can
I'm
hook you up.
done. And
I'm gonna
Kevin
hook
can
you up
hook-
with the email. I'm gonna give you Sean's
Yeah.
email, and you'll give it to her. I'll give you Sean's email
that'd be
later.
great.
And okay, so I know we're kind of getting short on time here. The last question, Ashley, is so what made you want to become an examiner? That was actually asked to me. And that's a really good, if you think about it, that's a really good question. Because I don't know if I could handle it. I really don't. Well, number one, I wouldn't know any technical terms. I sure the hell wouldn't know how to read any paperwork, so I know that. I can talk good, but that's it. But what made you want to become an examiner?
You know what? I actually I have quite a few answers for that. My first one is my husband, when he went through his CMP exam process, we had to drive 4 hours away for it because that was the closest one. And so that kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, there's nobody like closer? And they're like, no, that's the closest one. I was like, dang, okay, so it's 4 hours one way. And then he was in the exam for like 4 hours. And because he had just gotten out of the military, so that man had a laundry list, and he did, 10 plus years. And then another 4 hours back up to where we live. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And originally I wanted to be a community care provider. And all of those contracts were swallowed up by the VA, unfortunately, for primary care, family medicine, which is what I specialize in. And so that kind of bummed me out. And then randomly I had QTC reach out to me and say, hey, we really need CMP examiners in your area. There's a huge backlog of providers, or there's a huge backlog of claims in your area, but nobody is there to service it. And I said, okay, how many will I see a year? Because I have my own family medicine practice I have to maintain as well. And they said, 35 a year. Guys, it is September 5th, and I have seen just shy of 600 as of January 1st. So I was grossly underestimated. And so that was that was tough. Another reason, and I don't like giving negative people attention, but I'm going to do it for a second. Another reason that I became a CMP examiner is because of Jason Johnson in the comments. Negative attitudes like that are exactly why I became a CMP examiner, because there oftentimes are a lot of people that come to my exam that are burned out, and they have lost faith in the system. They have lost hope in the VA, and they are on their last nerve, and they come into that exam with an absolute ripping chip on their shoulder. And they have entered that exam with the idea that they're going to fight me and that we're going to have a problem and that they're upset and angry with me. And I have never met these people before. I live to be with people like that because I hope that I can change their mind, and I hope that I can reinstate some faith, and I hope that I can show them that there are people in your corner, and to quit speaking so harmfully and in such generals on social media where just anybody can see it, because you don't realize the state of what other people are in mentally when they read the comments that you write. And maybe they had that last leg of hope and they read your comment and that was the last straw for them. And they said, you know what? I shouldn't trust them. Every CMP examiner is out there and they have an issue, right? I hope that I can be that one person to show them that speaking in generals is harmful. And to think that nobody is in your corner to help you is the wrong mindset, and that you need to give people a chance. Those are the people of why, because I want to turn that narrative around. It breaks my heart that so many people out there feel so negatively and so hurtful that people have to come on here and say stuff like that and potentially harm someone else's situation. I want to help you. And I want to get you the best case scenario possible. And I want to set your families up so that if God forbid you pass because of something that you're service connected for, that your families can file a DIC claim and be taken care of for the rest of their lives. I want your families to be taken care of when you're gone. And I don't want to be grouped with those CMP examiners that are out to get you, and they're setting up cameras outside to catch you doing things in the parking lot. That's not the case. I don't have that kind of energy.
Well, I brought
So,
that up. Yeah, I brought that because that's what people will tell, and that's why it's
yeah,
good to hear from an examiner like yourself. And
yeah,
and you're right. Negativity, 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 fighting. And that's the problem with the vets. And I want to tell y'all how I met her. And she will tell you flat out. I met them on TikTok. And I can tell you, between her and Sean are the most humbling veterans. These are veterans, to let y'all know. They were so gracious to everybody that they talked to. I can tell you, I don't know how many people Sean has helped, but it's got to be in the thousands, maybe tens
yeah,
of thousands.
yeah.
And I was so impressed because y'all didn't skip or miss a beat. Y'all are on it. Y'all know what you're talking about. Y'all are great at what y'all do, and I love it. And
Thank you.
I'm gonna leave it at that because that right there is all I can say is how I met them is how they help people. And I'm not talking about just little people. I'm talking about thousands. Guys, y'all got to understand, we got vets from World War II all the way to till
Yeah.
now. All of us need help. And
Yep.
all we're doing is fighting amongst ourselves.
Yep.
And it needs to
Yeah.
stop. It needs to stop.
Yes.
And let me tell you,
Yeah.
even and for you TikTok listeners that I invited y'all to listen to tonight, I hope the hell you're listening. Because this crap that's going on TikTok against veteran, combat vets, non-combat vets, we're all vets. We all need to stick together. We have one primary care. Is to take care of us and our families. I'm leaving it at that. I want to thank y'all
Yeah.
for listening tonight. And, Linda, thank you for coming on because I think you really need to hear it. We're going in after show, by the way. And John, thank you as always.
Thank you, Dee, so much for being in the comments. That's our social media manager for Guardians Advocate. I appreciate you for spending your time here. You're awesome, Dee.
Yes, thank you, Dee. I did not know that's who it was, but thank you so
Yep.
much. And thank everybody for listening, and we will see y'all next week. Thank you.